Hello, my name is Marsha Skrypuch, and I'm the author of Making Bombs for Hitler, which is about a young girl who was captured by the Nazis and forced to work for them during World War II. I want to read the first chapter to you, and what it's about is how Lida, who is the main character in this book, and her younger sister Larissa were captured by the Nazis, and both of the young girls were taken to a place. It looked like a hospital to them, and they were with a whole pile of other kids in a room, and it was like a sorting facility. And so Lida, the one who ends up making bombs, is sorted into one group, and her younger sister, whose name is Larissa, is sorted into a different group. And so Larissa's story continues in this book. It's called Stolen Girl. It's also published as Stolen Child. It's the same book. It just has different titles in different countries. So I'm going to read you the first chapter, and this is when this is the last time the two girls see each other during the war, okay? Because they're separated. Chapter 1, Losing Larissa, 1943. The room smelled of soap, and the light was so white that it made my eyes ache. I held Larissa's hand in a tight grip. I was her older sister, after all, and she was my responsibility. It would be easy to lose her in this sea of children, but we had both lost far too much already. Larissa looked up at me, and I saw her lips move, but I couldn't hear her words above the wails and the screams. I bent down so that my ear was level to her lips. "Don't leave me," she said. I wrapped my arms around her and gently rocked her back and forth. I whispered our favorite lullaby into her ear. A loud crack startled us both. The room was suddenly silent. A woman in white stepped in among us, and she clapped her hands sharply once more. "Children," she said in brisk German, "you will each have a medical examination." Weeping children were shoved into a long, snaking lineup that took up most of the room. I watched as one by one other children were taken behind a broad white curtain. When it was Larissa's turn, her eyes went round with fright. I did not want to let go of her, but the nurse pulled our hands apart. "Lida, stay with me." I stood at the edge of the curtain, and I watched as the woman made Larissa take her nightgown off. My sister's face was red with shame. When the woman held a metal instrument to her face, Larissa screamed. I rushed up and I tried to knock that thing out of the nurse's hand, but she called for help and someone held me back. When they finished with Larissa, they told her to stand at the other end of the room. When it was my turn, I barely noticed what they were doing. I kept my eyes fixed on Larissa. She was standing with 3 other children. Dozens more had been told to stand in a different spot. When the nurse finished with me, I slipped my nightgown back on. I was ordered to stand with the larger group, not with Larissa's. "I need to be in that group," I told the nurse, pointing to where Larissa stood, her arms outstretched and a look of panic on her face. The nurse's lips formed a thin, flat line. "No talking," she said. She put one hand on each of my shoulders and she shoved me towards the larger group. A door opened wide. We were herded out into the darkness of night. Larissa screamed, "Lida, don't leave me." I looked back into the room, but I could not see her. "I'll find you, Larissa," I shouted. "I promise. Stay strong." A sharp slap across my face sent me sprawling onto the cold, wet grass. I scrambled up and I tried to break through the sea of children. I had to get back to Larissa. Strong arms wrapped around my torso and lifted me up. I was thrown into darkness. With a screech of metal, the door slammed shut. So the rest of this book follows what happens to Lida. She's in the back of this truck. There's a bunch of other kids in there, and you can tell by the title that she ends up having to do slave work for the Nazis. And to read about what happens to the younger sister, you would read the other book, Stolen Child, and also published as Stolen Girl. This was the original title for Canada, and then in the US when it was published it was called Stolen Girl, and now all of the new ones look like this. But don't be confused in thinking that it's 2 different books. Thanks very much. Happy reading.